and welcome back to Lake Norman. So attendance has been down, so they told me to come up here and give the message. Not quite sure why, but take it for whatever it's worth. I do expect at least 6 to 7 baptisms and 3 to 4 confessionals before this sermon is over. Well, so take this out real quick. Simple message, simple question. Are you ready? If you're taking notes, that is the headline of today's topic. Are you ready? So this has been on me for a little while, and it's fitting that I'm prayers for Joshua first and foremost, that he's out. But we were looking for somebody to bring the sermon for tonight. We had a couple people lined up and everything like that, but I said, you know what? I'm going to do it. Amen. I can make excuses to say I'm in my profession and can't be here, or I can just say, hey guys, I need somebody to watch out for me for the next few minutes and be here. Are you ready? So a little bit of backstory for why I got on this message for is about a couple months ago, my kitty, Batman, he is the original cat. He is our very first cat that we had, very first cat. He's seen probably about 5 or 6 cats come and go, but he's always been there. So probably about 6 months or so ago, he was sitting in the house. He's walking around, whatever the case may be, and he's just looking funny. He doesn't look normal. Everybody that has pets knows what I mean by that. So he stops in front of me, and I look at him, he looks at me, and I said, man, are you okay? He just looks at me and walks off. Okay, so that was very, very odd for him to have done that. So as time goes on, he starts egressing instead of progressing. We were sitting here contemplating on making this ultimate decision about what we're going to do with him, because remember, this is our first. We've had him for 13 years now. We've had him 13 years. He's ran away twice. He is scared of the doorbell, but he's the friendliest cat that you'll ever come across once he gets to know you after 6 months. So we're sitting here, we're having to make these decisions. We're getting ready to come up on vacation, and we every other cat we've always had to take to the vet. And I said, you know what? Let's not do that to him. Let's not do that to him. Let's keep him here. Let's keep him here. So we try to push through. Karina did a great job over the weekend for us while we were gone. And then we came back, and he's hiding even more than normal. So we put him on this chair that he sits on with his little warming blanket, and he doesn't want to eat his food, but he decides that he wants to eat his food. And as he's getting off the couch, he literally falls off the couch. He falls off the couch. Pretty bad spill. He sits there, and he looks even worse. So I start messaging my wife back, and I tell her, I said, we got to make a decision. We got to make a decision. So unfortunately, a day later, we ended up having to send Batman on to the greener pastures where there are no doorbells. His name is not Earl, and it doesn't take 6 months for you to get to know him. The reason why I bring that up for is because while we're in that room, I got specific instructions from the nurse that says, when you're ready, push this button. When you're ready, push this button. The drive wasn't long enough to get to the vet hospital. That button wasn't far enough away to have to push. I remember sitting here, the button is right here, it's real close, and I want to reach out to it, but I can't. I want to reach out to it because I have to. I sit here and I ask, the reason why I bring up this story for is, are you ready? Are you ready for your salvation? Is your salvation true? Are you ready for Christ to come back? Because although it was so very hard for me to push that button for my kitty that I known for 13 years, think about what Christ had to go through when he was on that cross for all those hours. For my 40 years of being here. And guess what he could have done? He could have pushed that button and sent legions of angels. Legions of angels. Earlier this week, I was able to interact with a gentleman on the side of the road. He's sitting out there. He's got his sign up. I pull up in my unmarked vehicle, and I get and I talk to him for a few minutes. I said, man, what you doing out here? He's got his sign, hungry, whatever the case may be. And I said, I just want you to know, man, you can't be out here doing this. It's illegal in all 100 counties. Telling him everything he need to know so he can get on his way. I'm just trying to get a hotel for tonight. I'm trying to get some money for a hotel for tonight. I said, okay, well, here's what I'm going to do, man. I'm going to give you a warning. Let's move on down the road. Let's not do this. So now afterwards, we don't know how many times we interact with people in life. We don't know we have an opportunity to preach the gospel. So I'm sitting here and I'm thinking about, what can I do to try to help this man out? So you know what? I said, here's what I'm going to have you do. Bring you and your puppy. Let's go over to this establishment. I'm going to get you set up so you can have something for tonight. So we did that. Okay? 2 weeks later, I see the guy out there again. Roll up to him, turn my stuff on, roll my window down. I said, I could have sworn we had this conversation recently. Okay? I'm moving on. So he goes on. So lo and behold, 3 days later, see the same guy out here again. Except for he's further down the road trying to hide away from me. So I come through the woods, you know. Y'all seen Predator before, how he does. He's in the jungle, driving on through the woods and everything. So I pull up. And I tell him to come over to my car. He looks at me, and I said, my man, we've had this conversation literally 2 days ago. Well, ironically, he has a twin brother that I'm not aware of that looks exactly like him. And he says, it wasn't me, it was somebody else. So we're sitting here. So now at this point in time, we have to deal with consequence. So I tell him, I said, I'm going to give you this ticket. I told you beforehand, the ticket is $219 for you being out here. The reason why I tell them that is because I want you to go do something else to go make your money in order to better for yourself. So he goes and makes his excuses. He says, well, you know, he lifts his shirt up. He has something going on in his midsection I didn't wish to see. And he says, I can't do it because of my injuries that I have. I'm homeless because of the issues that I have. And I say here, and I told this man, my man, I lived in my car for 2 years. I lived in my car for 2 years. I made a decision to be better than what I am now. And it always starts with day one, step one. So then he goes on and he says, you know what? I could do that, but the money's so easy. They just give it to me. So why would I go and do when they're willing to do for me? There's a gentleman in the Bible named Jonah that came to mind. God puts us in certain places to do certain things. And ultimately, his will is going to be done. God sat here and told Jonah, you need to go to talk to the Ninevites, and tell them this, that, and another. Jonah says, no, I'm not going to go do that because I know better for myself. So I'm going to go hide and I'm going to go run. I don't know any place in the galaxy, known or unknown, where you can go from God and hide. If you can find it out, let me know about it so I can let them know where you're at. So he sits here, and Jonah finally goes, and he does. But then what happens afterwards? God, I'm finished with it. Are you happy now? God says, yeah, I'm happy that you didn't. I see his humor in this. He plants a little thing because he needs the shade. The shade comes over. God, I'm happy for the shade, but I didn't want to go do that. Then the little plant kills over. And that's not verbatim word for word, but an example of that. God will have his way. Are you ready? Because ultimately, Jonah felt that he could have done what he wanted to do and tried to escape what God wanted him to do, but guess what? God still had his way, and Jonah didn't. Same thing with the gentleman here. There are things that we have to do in life. There are people that are going to not interfere, but they're going to interject in our life, whether for positive or good. But what are you going to do with it? Are you ready? Matthew 7:21-23. Not everyone says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but the ones that do, but the ones who does, they will fill my Father, the will of my Father in heaven. On that day, many will say to me, Lord, Lord, when did we not prophesy in your name, cast out demons in your name, and do mighty works in your name? And then I will declare to them, I never knew you. Depart from me. Guys, that's real. That's more difficult to hear that than to push the button for my friend that I had for 13 years. This stuff is real that's out here. And if we're not doing our part of the faith by getting these people ready, whether they feel they're ready or not, then where are we supposed to be at? I truly believe that we have interactions with people not for our own knowing and not for our own gratitude, wherever the case may be. I have done tons of studies before in the past with people, individual and in groups, and I'm going to tell you my success rate is not high. I'll be the first to admit that. I'm going to say I probably had 15 to 20 studies, maybe more than that. I'm just giving a round number for it over the last couple years, and my success rate is probably around 10%. Now, I say that because, is it because of my success rate, or is it because God has other plans for this person at that point in time? Although I don't see it, that doesn't mean anything, but God has plans for these people that are out here. I sit here and I think about John's story that he has, and he made mention of it this morning, about how he ended up being here at Lake Norman. Now, so you have a conversation with John. I'm not going to tell you what that story is, so you can go ask him about it. But to hear his journey to get here, for where he came from one place to another and ultimately ended up here. Now, I'm going to say this here. That wasn't because of one person that interacted with his life. It had to be a group of people. But think about if you're not that person that's willing to go have that conversation. I sit here and I've shared this story tons of times. Why am I here for today? It's because there's a lady I met in the back, and I asked her what she was doing on a Wednesday. And she says, I'm going to church. And I did everything I could in my power to keep her from going to church that day. And she says, you can do what you want, but I'm going to be at church. Now, to think about that comment that she gave me, where would I be at today? Versus the other people I had been with before in my past. And just stay in the back. Don't come up here and get me. Okay? So there was a lady that I was with. Her name will not be made mention because I don't want her to appear. But I'm interacting with this lady. And she's not of the faith. She's very derogatory about everything there is to be. And I remember asking myself, is God real? What if I stayed with that person? Where would I be at now? Are you ready? Because if it wasn't for her, I don't know. I don't know where no Lake Norman is. I don't know where none of this stuff is. But she was ready. She picked up that mantle. And look at what's coming from that. I have 2 kids in the sound booth over there that are of faith. And who knows where that's going to go to afterwards. My little guy, I hate that he's not at his other school before, but he was a part of a church group. He's out there doing things, preaching the word to people. There's a donut, I believe the story was, that he gave to this one kid that didn't have. He would not have that heart. He would not have the opportunity. Not only if it wasn't for my family that I have, but because of everybody here in these seats. Just because we don't feel like we're having impact on somebody, that does not mean we're not having impact on somebody. In Exodus 3, 9 through 12, you see primarily through the end of Exodus 3, you see that Moses comes up and he sees a burning bush. He questions it. He's wondering what's going on, and I'm just summarizing it, but eventually God comes down and says to him, take your sandals off for your holy ground. He gives them commands. And Moses makes all kinds of excuses not to go. Do you think that God would ever put something in our way that we couldn't handle? Do you feel that God would say, you know what, Ricardo, I'm going to send you to this foreign land that you're not familiar with, that you're not aware of, ill-prepared and not equipped to do what you need to do, so you be a failure? I've not ever seen that. There's too many examples in the Bible, there's too many examples in my personal life where God has sent me somewhere where he set me up for failure. There's been too many people in my life I've interacted with where they have had a negative consequence because I allowed them to. Not because they did it, but because I allowed them to. But look at Moses that's sitting here, a direct conversation, making all kinds of excuses. Well, God, I can't go because they're not going to believe who I am. God, I can't go because I can't speak. You see me sitting here on my phone trying to read scriptures I've studied for the last couple minutes, and I'm stuttering with it. We're still getting the message across. But if we don't at least go and do, how can we get them ready? How can I get ready? Amen. There's been tons of things that's been happening here in Lake Norman that have challenged me personally and spiritually. And if that's not happening to you as well, then you're here just sitting in the seats. We cannot grow and develop if we're not challenging ourselves and not pushing ourselves. I'll be the first one to say this here. I've been through the Old Testament tons of times, but have I ever read it from the beginning to the end of it? No, I haven't. So I sat down, I did the year study with it, and I know Joshua's not here. I'd be laughing at it because he has his own opinions about it. But I went through it, but I have a better understanding of it because I sat down and I read it from beginning to the end of it. So now I'm better ready than I was before. And I know it's not a complete sentence. I'm sorry. I'm sorry for that grammatical issue, that grammatical error. But if we don't start somewhere, we can never go.
Right.
And as you see, as Moses makes all of his excuses and he goes through, what happens? Does God have his will? Does God have his way? Did God send Moses somewhere he was unequipped to go and do? No, he gave him his staff. He gave him Aaron, and they went and they did. Now, totally different story after what he got there, what happened, but he still went, and he did. I sit here and I think about Saul on the road. If you don't know, Saul was a bad person in the New Testament. The Saul on the road to Damascus prior to that, he was a bad person. But yet you see here in Acts 9 where he says, Saul, Saul, why do you persecute me for? And what does he say? Lord, 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 are you ready? He had no clue what was going to happen, what was going on. He was blinded, he was taken, he was put in front of the other disciples and the apostles and all them like that, and they were scared. But yet, no, I'm here because God sent me here. I'm here because I want to do better what I'm doing. So no matter what your past is or what you have going on, it's all about the end. It's all about the story. It's all about the journey. I can't sit up here and tell you that I've not been through trials and tribulations, because it's not the case. I'll sit here and I'll tell this church family openly, I struggled with alcohol once upon a time. Now, it's hard to admit for a lot of people to do that, but I don't tell you this for a pat on my back or anything like that for completion. Which I'm not perfect. We all have our own personal stories, and whatever you're willing to share, whatever you're willing to do, that's up to you. But again, I can't get ready and be ready if I'm not willing to share that personal story for myself. So what I want us to leave off with is a message from 2 Timothy 4, 1 through 8, and then we're going to have our closing after this. And it said, I charge you in the presence of God and of Jesus Christ, who is the judge, the living and the dead, by appearing in his kingdom, preach the word, be ready in season and out of season, reprove, rebuke, and exhort, and with complete patience and teaching. For there is a time coming when people will not endure sound teachings, but having itching ears, they will accumulate for themselves teaching to suit their own passions, and they will turn away from listening from the truth and wander off into myths. As for you, always be sober-minded, endure suffering, do the work of an evangelist, fulfill the ministry, for I am always being poured out as a drink offering, and the time of my departure has come. I have fought the good fight, I have finished the race, I have kept the faith. Henceforth, there is laid up for me a crown of righteousness, which the Lord, the righteous, will judge and award me on that day. And not only to me, but also those who all have loved in his appearing.
Amen.
In order to get it, you got to be ready. It takes more than just the Sunday a.m., the Sunday p.m., the Wednesday, the Tuesday Bible studies, the personal studies. Because it's easy to be a Christian, it's easy to be of the faith when you're with the brothers. But what about when you're out there by yourself? I know that Richard said this tons of times. I love the guy. I don't want to be behind him in a grocery store because he's going to have a full-blown Bible study with you by the time you get to the express checkout. But that's what we need to do. We all need to start somewhere. Trust me, John 3:16 was the only verse that I was comfortable with in the Bible. And I'm not saying I'm fully fluent, and I'm not trying to pat myself on the back either, but you got to get ready so you know more than what it was before. And if you're not challenging yourself, and you're not sitting there saying, what is making me uncomfortable about the Bible and exploring it, then you're doing not only yourself a disservice, but that brother or sister that's going to come up to you and ask you a simple question of why. You got to be able to explain that.
Amen.
So as we have these words here for today, I ask that you contemplate them as we have our song of invitation.
Amen.
Sweet hour of prayer.